Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Marian White, and with me is my co-host since early 90s, we believe. We can't quite remember when we started.
Yes.
Ken Bialo.
Good evening, Marian.
Ken, who spent 4 years as mayor in the village of Larchmont and 11 years as trustee on the Larchmont Village Board. Thank you for those volunteer hours.
Yes.
And our favorite guest is Mike Weiner. Mike spent 5 years on the Larchmont Village Board, and I think you were a volunteer fireman in the village of Larchmont for, 25 or 28 years? And also
35.
35
years.
Oh,
yeah.
my. And also you were the volunteer fire chief for 3 years. So that's a lot of volunteer hours also. So being surrounded by such wonderful people.
But you're so modest, Marian. You were a trustee for a long time also, and then you were chair of the infamously defunct Republican Party in the village of Larchmont.
The phoenix will rise.
Oh,
Maybe next century.
God will.
Well, we first have to talk about the wonderful evening that Furniture Share House had. It was the biannual gala called the Power of 10.
This one was called the Power of 10 because it was the 10th year. This is the 10th anniversary. April of 2017, in fact, will be the actual 10th anniversary of the famous Furniture Share House, the infamous Furniture Share House. Yeah. And it was a great, you were there, right?
Of course.
Yes, I can't, it was a blur. There was some.
Well, you had to help with the party.
Yes, of course. Let's see, we had 330 something people. The fundraising was a complete success. We exceeded budget guesstimates by about a little less than 20%, maybe 18%.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was really phenomenal, and I think everybody who was there, as far as I can tell, was having a fun time.
Well, the open bar really helps.
You know, well,
and the food was great.
You pay for a ticket. You get free booze. Anyway, it was great. It was a great vibe. There was a fellow there from 107 point something or other FM.
The Peak.
The Peak, is that what it's called? And what's his name? Larry, I've forgotten his last name. Anyway.
He was very nice. He donated his time, and he was very good at getting money out of people.
He was really great at dragging money out of people. That was terrific, and the volunteers did a great job of setting it up and arranging it, and the club, the Marian Beach Yacht Club, did a great job with the service and the
It's a really nice space. There was a very open kind of space, so people could move around and still eat and whatever.
And there were fewer vignettes this year. That was a deliberate decision. I think last time, 2 years ago, there were 24. And that's it's an unbelievable amount of work to set up those 24 things. To get 24 designers, to get them to the warehouse, to pick out stuff that's been set aside as a little better quality stuff and put it in, more interesting stuff, and put it into a design, and then get the design transferred from a place where the designing is done into there, and then get the stuff out at night is a huge, monumental logistical issue.
Well, this was just much easier. The flow was much easier.
The flow was better. There were only 12.
More room for
there were only
people.
12, and there was that. And then there was that side room where they were selling individual pieces.
Yes.
So if you saw something that you thought was interesting for a mom and dad's anniversary, or for a birthday, or whatever it is for your kid, there was a place where you could buy it. The prices were great.
Yes.
And the stuff was really nice, beautifully put out. It's really, the volunteers did a great job. The designers did a great job. The people who chaired the event and the event committee did a great job.
How about the executive director and council? Two separate people.
The council's got nothing to do with it, but nothing happens that the executive director hasn't vetted and vetted and vetted and vetted again.
Yes.
She's all-knowing and all-seeing. But it turned out great. So how can you argue with success on something that's this great,
So I hope she's just relaxing for a little while.
Yes. Sadly, the county executive was at a wedding in the city, but the deputy county executive came. And,
oh, really?
Oh, yeah. He was around for quite a while. And we always look forward to seeing them because the county plays a large role in what we do. It's not a county organization. It's a charitable organization run by volunteers who, in case you don't know, give away furniture for free to people coming out of shelters and drug clinics and so on and so on. If they're brought in by member agencies, the Department of Social Services of the county is a very large and important member agency in the bringing in of people, make sure that they get the opportunity to take advantage of what has been collected for them to pick from.
Right.
And they do a great job. The volunteers go shopping with them. It's like Bloomingdale's. They go shopping with you.
I would need a shopper to go with me. I don't know what's good in terms of furniture.
Well, there's 6,500 square feet of stuff, and it's stacked up, and there's a lot of items. These are collected from our neighbors in Westchester County.
Yes.
Right, and so gently used furniture gets collected. It gets brought there, and then people from shelters brought in by the member agencies come and they go around with the volunteers and select stuff, and then it gets delivered to their house. So the upshot of this whole thing was that a lot of the pieces are selected by the designers from in the warehouse inventory. They put them together, they bring them there, and we sold them and made 18% more than we had expected in the budget, which is pretty close to a year's, a little bit around a year's worth of
Really?
Of expenses. Because the expenses are low, right? It's the truck,
Right.
it's the rent, and it's the accountants who have to file the 501c3 return every year, and then some insurance and so on. So that's really those are the expenses, and everything else is done by volunteers.
Well, it was a wonderful evening, and I
Glad you were
hope
there.
Kate.
We missed you.
I hope Kate will take some time to recharge her batteries.
I doubt it.
True. Well, look what happened.
Oh.
We didn't intend that to happen, but it sort of is what happened
It's the
on
natural
election
order.
night.
It's the natural order of things.
Yes. So this was this was a total surprise to really everyone, because the press was very clear that Hillary was supposed to win by 4 points or more, and people were talking about landslides and things like that. So it was an incredible evening.
Yes.
It was long, too.
Oh no.
Well, you were on a radio show.
Yes.
Do you want to take us through some of that?
Probably not, but I will share a couple of interesting thoughts with you. Our radio show starts at 9. We usually knock off at 12. We were there till 1:30 because there were some states that were coming in a little later. I think there was, my memory is, I had the calculations, it was Minnesota, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin was already called Michigan. Minnesota, Michigan, and Pennsylvania could have shifted Hillary from 215 to 271 if she had won all three of those states.
You're kidding.
The
my
media,
gosh.
the CNN and Fox, the guys who were on we have TVs in the studio, weren't calling those states, even though it seemed pretty clear that the vote from the various parts of the state that made a difference actually had been counted. They held up on calling them until way late in the morning, so that people would go to sleep thinking that it was still possible for Hillary to win, and it was. It was. 46 electoral votes would have put her up at 271. She had 215 at that time, according to the sort of the consensus counts. Anyway, we stayed till 1:30 to see what was going to happen, and nothing actually happened in those three states official. But when I got home, I guess it was that Hillary called
Oh, right,
Trump,
that was about
and,
2-something.
Yeah, 2-something, and conceded, and that was sort of the end of the evening. It was an interesting radio show in that we were following what was happening in Mamaroneck, with the 2 referenda and the 3 Republican candidates and the 3 Democrat candidates running for office of trustee, the Democrats being the incumbent. We were watching what was happening in the Latimer-Julie Killian Senate race.
Right.
To see if anything changed there from the normal, which would be for George to get 60 or 65% of the vote, and there was nothing particularly dramatic there. And we were watching the rest of the New York State Senate to the extent that we could. Here's the problem. You're waiting on counties to return, and the county returns come in pretty slow. So we had some information on Latimer because there were actually reporters at the two headquarters.
Oh, okay, so
So
they
they were calling
Right.
in, looking at the boards that were in the headquarters, that where people were writing up the number of votes. But you didn't have that for the rest of the state. So it actually, I think I went to sleep. It was a complete surprise that the Republicans held on to an actual numerical majority, separate and apart from the breakaway Democrats, an actual numerical majority as of that time. I haven't seen anything about that since then, by the way, and I don't know if that may have
Well,
changed.
you're right. That
It's kind of receded into
Yeah.
the other nonsense that's been happening. So it was, so we were following those things, and you can follow them a little bit. You get calls from reporters, and you work through the Fox broadcast and the CNN broadcast, and it's very interesting. John Verney does a great job. It's very local, right?
Yeah.
John Verney does a great job. It's Valerie and
Jim
I were there.
Mazzano called in.
Yeah, Jimmy Mazzano called in to talk about the United States Senate race, which we watched a little bit, but I don't think any of us thought that there was going to be much doubt about it.
Right.
So it didn't occupy a lot of attention, and the House race didn't occupy any attention at all. That was completely predictable and turned out to be a solid prediction. So it was a fun show. It was very long. There were some people who were on the panel who were distraught. I mean, really just utterly distraught at the results as they were rolling in. And everybody did their best to try and keep a conversation going in the presence of some people who were really
Well, we've been
very
on that
unhappy.
side, haven't we?
we
So-
regularly.
Yeah, regularly.
2012, 2008.
So what were you doing? What were your thoughts on election night, Mike?
I was actually amazed. I had listened to the press, I guess, a little too much. But believe it or not, I'm actually more amazed now on how the current reaction going on and how people are so worried about how things are going to change. As I like to remind everyone, this is a large country
Yes.
with lots of opinions. I think the biggest thing that we all can have at this point is hope and consensus. Get around our new president-elect. You know, he was voted. Now we have to sit there and see what we can do, and just like everyone else, just keep our eyes open. I think if it does nothing else, it should show the power of actually debate and discussion, because I think it shows that people wanted a change on all sides.
At the end of the day, I think that's right.
And I think it's, we're not done. This is not a one-shot done. We need to redescribe and redefine what it is that we all want and how it is we expect to get it. You know, the topic of this show on a lot of things is, how do we pay for it locally, especially.
Right.
But I think it's coming back to bear on a broader stage. We've seen some of these issues internationally. Brexit was another defining moment. Now we're seeing, how the U.S. reacted,
Right.
and I don't think it's over yet. And I think it's like, how is it that what is it we're going to do going forward? How are we going to tackle all the issues? And what I'm hoping for is it fosters debate, it fosters discussion, and it fosters open and honest communication.
I'm hoping actually that we don't have open and honest communication. And I would go in a flash for the cigar smoke filled back rooms to choose candidates on a national scale and on a statewide scale in a flash instead of primaries. Primaries are a mess. They bring out the most extreme people, the most motivated people, people with the strongest feelings, and frequently that means the most extreme people on both sides of the fence. I'm not talking about one side or the other.
Right.
And then you wind up with candidates like this, which I think was an unfair choice. My view is, I would have voted for a shoe over Hillary Clinton.
Well,
It's
yeah.
just awful, an awful candidate, an awful person, a person whose crimes and corruption, the whole thing was really aggravating. But on the other side, instead of producing somebody like Paul Ryan, who in my mind is the candidate, he is the guy, right? Instead of producing that, the system, and it doesn't produce anybody who's held public office before, it produces a guy like Trump, who I think may be a fine person in business dealings where he's building towers or lending his name to somebody else who's building a tower and kind of overseeing things. But clearly at the beginning of the campaign, was a person who had absolutely no experience dealing in public life.
Well,
He's busy
clearly,
twittering at 3 o'clock in the morning. The stupidest stuff. I mean, just wild things, wild things. So I don't begrudge him the victory. I wouldn't have begrudged it to Hillary. But I don't think that was a good choice for us. I think we could have done better on both sides of the fence. And I think it's the primary system that threw this stuff up. And we all know about, the Democrat National Committee's efforts to get Hillary to be the candidate and efforts to shove Sanders aside. Well, he can't win. Well, that's what people were saying about Trump. He can't win, but he did win. The answer is, in my mind, there are too many candidates. There's too much stuff. We need some professional judgment. And the best people to make the professional judgment are the people who speak for this whole, can you get this? This is a picture of the country, by the way.
And how it voted.
And how it voted. You might happen to notice that there's a lot of red, and there's blue in the northeast coast corners, and there's blue in the west, or as we say, the left coast. But the rest of the country, for the most part, there's a little bit here in New Mexico. For the most part, the country is red. That's what we're dealing with now. I think it's a result of the head crushing of these two candidates, and I want this to go away. I really want it to go away. I don't want to prosecute Hillary. I think we should just leave it alone. Just put that to rest. The president, Mr. Obama, ought to pardon her, and he can't.
Right.
Oh, I agree with that.
Just put it to rest.
We
can't.
We saw that. We
Yeah.
saw that
Instead
when Nixon was
Yeah,
president.
instead of continuing to have this stuff headlining, and the children who are running around the streets, or the paid agitators, or whoever it is, really, come on, guys, no tantrums. It's over, right? You had your chance. You voted. Everybody voted who wanted to vote. Everybody who didn't want to vote, that's their problem. And the results are the results. So now you do exactly what Michael was saying before, and exactly what Trump said, and exactly what President Obama said, which is you pull it together, you pull up your socks, and you get going, all right? Maybe this will work, maybe it won't work. Maybe lower tax rates would be a good idea. Maybe repealing NAFTA will be a good idea. Maybe actually securing the borders will be a good idea. Maybe treating ISIS or ISIL or whatever you want to call them as the threat that they are would be a good idea. There are lots of things where change is going to be good. And so what's this emotional reaction? I have to have Hillary, I have to hang on to it. People are unhinged. That's my word for the night, right?
Well,
They're unhinged.
Certainly the markets, while they fell when it first seemed that Trump was being elected, then by the morning they were recovered a great deal, and now they're up quite a bit.
What,
so
10%?
Well, I don't think
8%?
that much, but 3 or 4 or 5%. Because he had talked about things that would lead to growth in the economy and jobs.
What's wrong with that?
Sectors are changing too, though. And I think it's going to be interesting, and I think this is where some of the debate is what is it as a country we want to do going forward? I mean, one of my whole big conversations, it's not so much political, is we're in the digital revolution now.
Right.
How do we sit there and take a leadership role in digital revolution? And I'm not talking about where iPhones get manufactured. I'm talking about how do we change and leverage technology for what technology can do and how it's going to change. The autonomous car is going to change things tremendously.
Right.
The concept of the Internet of Things and monitoring. How do we change devices to as they become more natural? What are the security implications of all of this? And I'm talking both national security as well as personal security and personal privacy. The fact that I can tell everything you do, does it make it right that I should?
I think these are actually the issues that you identify are actually 20 years old. And looking forward now, we're not looking at the digital revolution. The revolution has come. It's way in an advanced stage, and what it's done is it's separated people. It's separated those who know, and I will say that there's a lot of that in the Northeast, and there's a lot of that in Palo Alto, and there's a lot of that in Beverly Hills and the Los Angeles area. Those who know and know how to work it, and work it well and manipulate it. There we have the traders on Wall Street, the advanced traders, the algorithm guys, the hedge guys. All of this stuff is way ahead of the rest of the country. It's not an issue of what do we do about this. It's an issue of what do we do about them? They need to do something about them, and there needs to be guidance from Washington. It's the same vote as Brexit. It's don't give me anything more from the outside, and you've left me behind in this digital revolution, and I'm now really ticked off about it. Now, what are we going to do about that? That's what's the concern. It's not the people who know how to use these gizmos. Nobody cares about them. They care about themselves enough to make up for everybody else on the planet, the history of the planet not caring about them. But the people in the middle, all of that red needs guidance. They need equipment, they need guidance. And the way to start it, in my view, is bring back $1 trillion, find $200 billion out of that, start rebuilding the roads, put people to work. Stop talking. It's too much talking. Put them to work.
That's a good point. Too much
It's just,
talking.
we're going to talk about this forever. And these kids are going to be in the street waving their lollipops around saying, oh my God, our candidate wasn't elected. Grow up.
Well,
Get to work.
I do think, technology is just expanding and changing things rapidly. So I agree with Mike that, we have to be focusing on where that's leading us to.
That's
Because
old.
someone's going to control it.
That's old.
Well,
It's
I know,
old.
but then there's the new stuff, all the biotechnology stuff.
Yes. But that's also old. All the people who work in these areas, this is 10 years old to them. It's now trickling down. He's a VP with all kind of electronic gizmos in his office and stuff. It's trickling down everybody else, but we're not the ones that need to be concerned about that. First of all, I'm old. I don't know about you. Second of all, the people who turned this vote around, the people who spoke, there's no more talking. The people who spoke are saying we need to get in. And it doesn't do anything for me to sit here and say, well, we can talk about it. Sure, we can talk about it. What we say to each other doesn't mean a damn thing. It's got to be out there where the people are mad and they don't have jobs and they need things to do. And it's not right. It is not right that hasn't been shared with them. This is an effort of the last administration. There are pockets of population that got very good treatment, and the vast bulk of the country did not. Now it's time. You pay the piper. And that's what we should be talking about, is how do we resolve that so that we have a country that moves forward instead of just little pockets around the country. And
Do you have thoughts about how to, help all those red people?
not red people.
Well, the states.
They're counties.
Well, I think first and foremost, one of the things I always do believe in is that while we are one nation, there's a reason we are 50 states. The problems that impact the Northeast and the issues that impact the Northeast are completely different from the Midwest and farming. Completely
Right.
different again from the arid states in the West. Water rights in the West is a huge deal. Water rights to us, we have it.
Right.
I think so. The concept of doing more with, less federalization, I would guess, would be
Okay.
the better word. Would be something. I also think it's taking the time to listen. It can't always be my way or the highway.
Except we've raised our kids so that they think that, their ideas are all very valuable and should be heard and should be acted upon.
By everybody. Everybody
Yes.
has the right to know my innermost thoughts.
And
Everybody has
respect
the right
them.
to. Yes, and if I can't type it out on
Twitter.
a Twitter or a whatever that is, a Snapchat or something, then I can tell you by waving my lollipops around and saying, I insist that you listen to what I have to say. Yes, there's a time for that. It's over. It's over. You had a chance. Now we have to get to work, not talk. My view.
Exactly.
My view. Stop
And I
yakking.
think some of what we're going to have to do is, if we take a look at education, we've been saying, a lot of people have been saying for years, is if you really want to grow in this technology area, we're going to have to think more technically. I mean, that's my view of the world. I mean, obviously, I'm a technician, so I would think that way. But I think it's a balance of, you can't ignore math and science. I think we're going to have to learn how to do more of that front and center.
Okay, I agree with that.
And the reason I bring up the digital revolution was when I was young, and yes, I was actually young at some point, was we were in the middle of the space race.
Right.
Didn't have a clue how to get to the moon. Got there. And in the process, we actually created the integrated circuit. We created a lot. The derivative technologies of that particular race are still being are still providing rewards today. And that's why I was saying some of this with the digital revolution. What new rewards can we provide? What new things can we sit there and dream up? But what we need is to have that focus, that goal.
Right.
Something that is really out there.
Well, they want to get people living in Mars or something, right? Is that far enough? That's out there.
Could be that. I mean, I think we have to figure that out and then do it. As Ken said, do it.
No, figuring is done. Figuring is done. It's a Republican Congress and a Republican president, sort of. And the figuring is done. Now people are going to negotiate for what they're actually going to do. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to sit around and say, well, what should we do about going to Mars? It's not going to happen that way. It's not going to happen in this Congress that way. Paul Ryan is not a think about it kind of guy. He is a doing kind of guy. And my guess is he's going to have a lot of influence on what actually happens in the White House and what actually happens in the, well, a lot of influence what happens in the Congress. And I don't think it's going to be a lot of talking. I think it's going to be a lot of doing. Talking is done. My view, my personal view.
Well, that would be good, though I think the thinking has to be there too, the vision. We always benefit by having a vision. Well, to be continued, but what an amazing turn of events. So thank you very much.
Do we have enough time for me to read 2 sentences from the New York
Oh,
Times?
2 sentences fast,
Yes. The New York Times author, publisher, and editor said, as we reflect on this week's momentous result and the months of reporting and polling that preceded it, we aim to rededicate ourselves to the fundamental mission of Times journalism. That is, to report America and the world honestly, listen to that word, without fear or favor, striving always to understand and reflect all political perspectives and life experiences in the stories we bring to you. That, my friends, in my view, is an apology for their coverage of this election, and maybe they'll win back some of their readers, but you wouldn't be saying we need to do it honestly now if you hadn't been for the last 2 years not doing it honestly.
Yes, well, I'm sure there will be quite a few people keeping score. Well, thank you so much, both of you, and we hope you'll be back and we can talk more about this.
Cool.
Thank you very
Pleasure to
much
see
to
you.
the talent on the other side of the cameras and to LMC-TV.